Hey y'all, I don't know where my head is, but I absolutely just am now re-recording this video because I kept my microphone muted the entire time I recorded the last one and ended with static. Wonderful. So, in this one, let's talk about commas. This is actually really important. A lot of people don't use commas properly. You need to know how to use in sentence punctuation, just like you need to know how to use end punctuation. So like in this one, you're going to be taking notes, doing practice work and a mastery check. But like I said, this is really all continuing to be about how to be a good writer, how to be a professional writer, how to write accurate sentences. And you need to know how to use and not use commas in the right way when you are doing your writing. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So let's first start by talking about rules for using commas to connect things, okay? Using a comma before a conjunction. Conjunctions are words like and, for, but, or, nor, or so. These are words that you use to combine. You use a comma before conjunctions to combine two sentences, okay? And commonly I see people using commas after the conjunction. You do not. You always use the comma before the conjunction, okay? I like working outside, and I also enjoy reading. You have two complete sentences being joined together with the word and. The comma comes before the and. He got out of school early, so he took a nap. So is your conjunction connecting the two sentences. The comma comes before so. You also use commas to separate a list. This is something that you probably already do. Amy ordered 2 hamburgers, a Coke, and a large order of fries. Please notice that there is a comma here before this conjunction and before the last thing that you are having in your list, okay? You also use commas before and after words like however, nevertheless. These are generally things that either introduce or interrupt a sentence. For example, Adam did not like math. He was, however, very successful in his math classes. The word however is interrupting the sentence. You don't need it, but it's interrupting, and you have a comma on both sides of the word however. You also have comma rules for explanatory commas, okay? And the first rule for that is that you always use a comma after lengthy introduction phrases, and you do not use commas if those phrases fall at the end of a sentence. So let's take a look at what I mean. In order to be successful, one must learn to write well, okay? In order to be successful is an introduction. One must learn to write well is a sentence. It can stand all by itself, but that introduction phrase sets it up, gives it a little bit more detail and spunk, and so you put the comma after that phrase. After she learned the rules for using commas, her grades improved. Same thing, an even longer introductory phrase. You could just say her grades improved. But we now have specificity about why her grades improved by adding that introduction sentence and putting the comma to separate the intro from the actual thought. Here's an example where that, with that same sentence where it's reversed and your phrase falls at the end. Her grades improved after she learned to use commas correctly. Notice there are no commas there because the phrase itself falls after the complete thought, her grades improved. You also use commas before and after non-essential elements. Non-essential elements means that you have a phrase in a sentence or words in a sentence that you don't have to have in order for the sentence to make sense. Generally, these are things that add additional detail to a sentence. For example, Horace Mann Elementary, which is the smallest school in the district, enrolls only 160 students. We do not need this phrase that it's the smallest school in the district. We could just say Horace Mann Elementary enrolls only 160 kids. The fact that we say it only enrolls 160 kids already shows us that it's small. But then to identify it as being the smallest school in the district, that's additional information to give it more detail. But because that we don't need it, it's not essential to the sentence, we set it off with commas, okay? I actually like to think that you could draw. I wonder if I could get a little tool up here. Oh, I cannot. But if you were to draw a little handle, you drew a little handle from that comma to that comma, you could pull this out of a sentence and the sentence would still make sense. That's how you know whether it's essential or not. Can you get rid of that information and still have a complete sentence? If you can, it's not essential. If you cannot, it is essential. I hope that all makes sense. You also use commas between two or more adjectives that describe a noun. What's important here, though, is that those adjectives, you only use the comma if you can reverse them, okay? You do not separate adjectives that are not of equal importance, all right? So what I mean by that is, by the end of the game, the field was a slippery, wet mess, okay? We have two adjectives, slippery and wet, to describe the mess of the field, okay? Can we reverse these words? Can we use the word wet and then use the word slippery and still make sense? If we can switch it, we use the comma. If we cannot switch it, we don't. But in this case, we can say the field was a wet, slippery mess. They are still both describing the mess of the field, and they're of equal value. But check out this sentence. Her big blue eyes and bright red hair made her strikingly beautiful. Big blue are describing her eyes and bright red describing her hair. Can you reverse big and blue? Can you reverse bright and red? Would you say her blue big eyes and red bright hair made her beautiful? You wouldn't. That doesn't make any sense. So because you cannot reverse them, you do not use a comma. Finally, you have irregular comma rules. These are actually probably more common than you even think. But you use commas to separate elements of dates and places, for example, right? The date was June 12th, 1999. Notice that the comma comes after the day, not after the month, but we separate the date. Okay, he was born in St. Cloud, Minnesota. We have a comma between the city and the state. Then you also use commas before direct quotations. When asked if he had studied for the test, Paul replied, comma, only a little, and his grade showed it. The only other thing I want to point out here is that this comma is inside the quotation marks. It's not quotation, then comma. It is comma, then quotation. Okay? So these are your comma rules. That's all. If you've got it, move on with the lesson. Practice using them. If you're lost, you might want to go back and rewatch certain parts of the video. Make sure you've captured your notes. And if you're really lost, let me know and let's do some practice together.